Hello, viewers, and welcome to another episode of Reminiscences. Our guest today is Chief Onyema Ugochukwu, who is a journalist and a politician. He schooled, like many young men in his region of the Southeast, at the University of Nsukka, which he started in 1966. Of course, then there was the interruption of the Civil War, and he was obliged to serve in the Biafran army, where he rose to become a captain. But he completed his education in economics and became a staff of the Central Bank of Nigeria, from where he actually made the surprising switch to journalism, I believe in 1975 or thereabout. He was in the Business Times, which was then one of the leading financial publications, where he quickly became the editor, and later on the editor of West Africa, which is based in London, and finally the editor of the largest Nigerian newspaper then, the Daily Times of Nigeria. After his stint at the Daily Times, when the time for politics came in the late 90s, he joined the Obasanjo campaign as director of publicity. And of course, when the ticket won, became a senior special assistant to the president until 2007. He also became the pioneer chairman, I believe, of NDDC. This is the Niger Delta Development Corporation. He had his own political project, which is to run as governor in Abia State, his home state, in 2007. And you will hear how that didn't happen, but how he also has remained active in the People's Democratic Party, of which he's still a member of the Board of Trustees. So this is a kind of longish introduction, but I'd like to welcome you and to say how happy we are to have you to have this conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you, Yusuf.
So first thing first, we always start with the background. You had a very interesting background. As a young man, the war came. So take us back to it. How the schooling and the influence of the schooling.
Well, I was born in the village, my village, Umule, in Umaya. Umaya is now the capital of Abia State. And attended school up to what was then Standard 3 in a school in my village before I went to live with my uncle in Igwenga, Opobo, which is now called Abasi in Akwa Ibom. It was then known as Igwenga, Opobo. That was where I completed my primary education, 1958. And I passed into Methodist College, Uzakale. Methodist College, Uzakale, was one of our top schools then. And so one was excited to go in there. And then I spent 7 years there. Well, actually almost 8 years. School certificate in 63. Higher school certificate in 65. And then I was forced to teach in the school for 8 months before going on to university. The university, by then, of course, we had a crisis in the country.
But tell me, you still started to read economics in Nsukka, right?
Actually, initially, I took economics because I thought I wanted to go to Ibadan University.
How was your experience of the war? How did it disrupt this education, and how did you actually survive this experience?
Yeah, it was a very terrible experience going through that war. You know, it was unreal. People were making noise about, oh, we wanted freedom, but they didn't. Very few people had experienced the war before. So things were happening. We had ideas. Like I went to live in Port Harcourt with my elder brother. And initially people thought the invading army was going to come maybe in the night and you should report. If you are in the area where you should report and things like that. We had no idea what war was, really. But then my best friend was killed. He had joined the army. Immediately the session ended at Nsukka. He joined the army and was killed. And I said, oh, I have to get into the army. That's how I went to the School of Infantry. But then the training was for only 6 weeks. And the next thing, of course, you are in the war front and things like that.
So from being a student, young man, fun-loving, suddenly you found yourself a soldier.
Yeah, that's what happened. 6 weeks training, you are in the front. I was in 40 battalion.
You must be terrified, by the whole thing.
No, it's something, actually it was exciting in its own way. You go in there and you get I had a command of a platoon in 40 battalion, platoon 7 of C Company, 40 battalion, 55 brigade, in the Afikpo area. That was where I started off. And we didn't really have the equipment to withstand the federal troops. That is the truth of the matter. Sometimes I found that in a platoon of 30 persons, there were only 10 guns. Some of these guns were antiquated from the First and Second World Wars. You know, the Mark III and Mark IV rifles and things like that. And then it will be leading people who have no weapon. And some will have rattles, which they will be waving. And of course, a rattle wouldn't confuse a soldier. But we imagine that the sound could, give the opponent the impression that there was a gun. Things like that. And some of those young people were waiting for one of their colleagues to fall so they take his gun. Or you get a gun from the enemy side. That was the kind of situation we had. We didn't have the equipment.
You rose to become captain also. So it suggested that you acquitted yourself well.
Yes, yeah. But I also got injured, actually.
Yeah.
I hadn't been up to 3 months in the place. And in that front, I got promoted. I had a double promotion from under officer to full lieutenant, which was quite exceptional and all that. And then I got shot up. My thumb here was cut off.
Yes.
And I had a bullet through my leg and things like that.
So that took you out of action for a while?
For a while,
yes.
Yeah. But even before I had fully recovered, the battalion appointed me adjutant of the battalion, 40 battalion. So I had to go back, But adjutant is more administrative. But it also could give you some functions in the forward lines and things like that. Things like that.
What has that terrible experience of war kind of taught you when you hear now people talking about the country, whether we are going to survive or have to fight or over certain things?
Yeah, people should not look for war. Anything could happen to anybody. Some of the shocking scenes will be a mother leaving her child and running. And like what is happening in DR Congo now, the people carrying their loads and walking, quite often they don't know where they're going.
Do you think there's any risk that we have not learned enough from this terrible experience that you personally went through?
Yeah, we have not learned from it because most of the country were not affected. The north, the southwest were not really affected by the war. For some people, it was a good time to become rich. The war itself helped to create a new environment of corruption, military contracts, and so on. People suddenly became rich. And there were parties, people throwing lavish parties and so on.
So do you think this agitation by Mossad, IPOB is also part of that? That look, they had no experience of the war and they blame others for the outcome?
Yeah, I think to some extent, yes. They had no experience. They reject the defeat or the surrender. And they want to hype things. But if they actually knew about the war, if they looked at the realities of that war, they won't be threatening violence, IPOD itself, for me, initially, was a lot of hype. It wasn't violent until we made it violent. But the repression was what turned it into a violent aggression.
Do you think there's a way to go around it, to calm it down now? Are the elders working on that, or is something beyond you now?
The elders have talked, There are very few elders who want to encourage a violent situation. But you see the situation we have in the East now, that insecurity is taking over the place for up to 4 years now, almost. People don't go out on Mondays. That's we lose one working day of the week in a place where the majority of people depend on their own labor to earn a living.
Yeah.
And you make them not go out to work, which means they don't earn anything. One day a week for so long, and things like that. It's not helpful. The elders have tried to come. But then one issue is the imprisonment, or is it detention? Because the trial hasn't been concluded of the IPOB leader, Nnamdi Kanu. In fact, that's what worsened the security situation. If the trial had gone on, it should have been concluded by now. And the young people he was leading have this feeling, in fact, that there's no intention to conclude the trial. The intention is to detain him indefinitely. And that is what is fueling their own part of it. We would like to bring the situation to an end, which is why our leaders keep asking the government to release Nnamdi Kanu. Frankly, I don't think there's a case for detaining him. There's no real case for detaining him. If there were a case, the government should then have concluded the prosecution by now. And I think if they release Nnamdi Kanu, it will help to bring a peaceful environment in the Southeast.
In your own personal case, after you finish, I mean, shortly after the war, you finish your university, Nigeria actually, you know, took you back. You got a job in the central bank. It's like reconciliation for you quickly happened. Did you feel that way?
Yeah, I think the government at the time helped us settle in at the university. At the time we went back, there were no beds, no chairs. We would sit on blocks in the classroom, you know. And then eventually the government sent a number of desks. I think the government of the Midwest at the time, Bender, also gave some things. And the government of General Gowon helped to, you know, but there were no beds.
Yeah.
So, but over time, yes,
You still managed to finish your studies.
we reintegrated very quickly. And the central bank job itself, well, you know, at the time, you could be interviewed as soon as you finish your degree exam, but I applied. And what happened, the interview was quite strenuous. Actually, in that year, when the batch I got in, from the South, they took only 4 people into the research department. One person with a PhD and a doorman, 2 people with a master's degree, one from Abia today, and the other a Yoruba man. And I was the only first degree person they took in the research department. And from the north, they took somebody from, you know, for the research department. So it was a strenuous process that we went through. But the bank paid well then.
Yes.
The salary was about the best, better than oil companies. And you know how much?
No.
1,440 pounds.
In 1973?
72. And then it converted to Naira. So the annual salary became 2,880 Naira per annum. That was the annual salary. 2,800, and it was higher than the oil companies. Shell was paying something like 2,400. In government, of course, the best starting salary was, I think, 840 pounds, which converted to 1,680 per annum.
But you didn't stay in the CBN. You quickly, which is one of the really curious things about your career. Why the switch from that very high-paying, conservative, solid job to journalism?
Yeah, somehow I had always wanted to do journalism, you know, to be a journalist. I told you about admission.
Yes.
Nsukka had a department of journalism and things like that. But where I wanted to go to didn't, and so on. But at Nsukka, I did take some courses that didn't have credit with the journalism people. So in any case, my family wouldn't have allowed me to read journalism. I always wanted to be a journalist. And when the Daily Times was about to start the Business Times, I applied. And the salary they gave me was 4,500 naira per annum. I was already earning 5,600. And so actually there was a drop,
Yeah.
but I took it
Yeah.
just because I wanted to. I didn't tell my elder brother, who was my head. Yeah. It was after I resigned from the central bank before I told him.
Did they give you a position that made up for your drop in salary? For example, did you go at the senior level?
Yeah, I moved very rapidly.
You became the editor very quickly.
The Business Times started in September 1975. I had to give notice to Central Bank. I didn't join immediately, even though I was writing for them. I finally joined fully at the beginning of November 1975.
Right.
They sent me to do a sub-editor's course with other people, of course, at the NIJ then. And then, I came in November. In May 1976, I was sent to Kenya to cover UNCTAD, the United Nations Conference. It lasted 1 month, and I was sent to cover it for 1 month. I was in Nairobi, and then I wrote stories. Economic stories. They couldn't use all my stories. In all the papers. I wrote stories for Lagos Weekend. I wrote for the sports, things like that. By the time I came back, I had become an established journalist. And then in June, I think, or beginning of July, the editor, Effiong Esen, was appointed general manager of the Chronicle newspaper in Calabar. So he resigned. And I was appointed acting editor. So I think it was about 7-8 months.
Yeah, that was
I became the acting editor. And things moved well.
Yeah. Did you really enjoy this high-pressure, quick promotion to head the Business Times?
Yes, I really enjoyed doing the Business Times. That time coincided with the oil boom and things like that. And the stock market was expanding because of indigenization policy. And people were interested in stock and things. So the Business Times grew really very quickly. And in between also, in 1982, I think about August, I had gone for an interview at OPEC, information officer and all that. So when all these were going on around December, OPEC told me they offered me the job. The managing director says, if going abroad, why don't you go to West Africa Magazine and all that? And of course, the salaries were not comparable. OPEC was paying huge amounts in dollars. But then, because of the pressure on me, I said, okay, after a certain date, if OPEC had not sent me the actual letter, I will accept. And the date passed. And I said, yes, I'll go to London. A few days after, the OPEC letter came, and the package was something like $60,000.
Wow.
At that time. But I had already committed myself. That's how I went to London as deputy editor. No, the salary was nothing comparable to the.
How was the experience living in London and doing journalism?
It was a good time, really. West African Magazine was quite influential at the time, especially in the Anglophone countries. It was also Margaret Thatcher time, and a period of economic crisis for Africa. You know, the great drought happened around 82-3,
Yes.
expanded to the whole of Africa. You know, Ethiopia was literally on its knees, but the drought got as far as Nigeria, Ghana, because cocoa farms were catching fire and things like that. And so it was a period when the IMF tried to take over our governments, to run our governments by dictating conditions and so on. So I wrote a lot about economics, you know, and I really enjoyed working in London. The Margaret Thatcher period also, I didn't like her, but she did what was necessary to change the life of Britain, turned Britain into a really prosperous country. And so the British began to drink wine in large quantities, wine bars springing up, and so on, and things like that. I really enjoyed London.
So at what point were you then given the ultimate job of editor Daily Times?
Okay, it was in 1987.
You were still in London then?
I was in London when I was appointed. And, well, I was excited because I was also looking at my prospects in London. Should I take a job with any of the papers and things like that? But I was lucky they appointed me. And
was that a big job, editor Daily Times in the 80s?
It was. It was, you had control of hundreds of journalists in literally every town in Nigeria. You know, it was a big job. The level in Daily Times wasn't that high. It was grade 2 appointment. But I was then moved to grade 1 of the company and so on. But it was a very important job. But when I came home, I didn't realize that I had to now do politics of the job. It required you to know the security people, you know, things like that, pay courtesy and so on. And so initially, I was getting invitations from the security agencies, Army, Directorate of Army, Military Intelligence, Navy, even for stories that originated from NAN, News Agency. We went on like that until one day I just decided on my own to call the Director of Military Intelligence and said to him, I want to visit you. And he said he wasn't in the office because he had malaria, but he would go to the office to receive me. So I went to see him. We chatted and all that, and you know, a very friendly chat. So he suggested to me I should also visit the Inspector General of Police and the Coordinator of Security. So I went to visit the Inspector General of Police at the time, Malangambo. He received me very well. And then I went to visit the Coordinator of Security at the time, Brigadier General Aliyu Mohammed Gusso, who received me very well. We talked for a long time. Then he brought in some of his boys. We talked again. Discussion was around what was my vision of the So along the line, General Mohammed became my friend, decided to be my friend. But he was more than just a friend. He became my guardian angel, sort of, you know. Other security people who would have liked to harass me didn't, because I was his friend and things like that, you know. Being editor of Daily Times was a high pressure job. Actually, it was then that I developed high blood pressure, you know. But there was the occasion, the Minister of Information, Tony Momo, was my friend.
We hear Daily Times then was doing hundreds of thousands of copies.
Yeah.
True, I mean, will you be able to divulge the copy you are making and the number of copies the paper was making?
No, but in the 80s.
In the 80s, yes.
Yeah. We had Sundays, when the Sunday Times did more than 500,000. But we never got to 1 million. Then we went into austerity measures under General Babangida. Then we went into SAP. And you yourself know that when incomes drop, one of the first things people give up is the newspaper. They would rather read on the newsstand and things like that. So numbers had come down by the time I came, but we were able to move it up.
Right. At what point were you sacked from the job? It always happens to editors.
No, I wasn't sacked.
Okay.
Something happened. You know, I must mention when Yemi Ogunbiyi came.
Right.
Yemi and I harmonized. We linked very well.
So he was brought in as managing director.
Yes, he came as managing director. He had very good vision of what needed to be done. He expanded the business. We were growing, we were making profit, you know. And he also made sure the staff benefited from the money we were making. His first year, there was a salary increase for everybody and things like that. He brought in new hands and new ideas, and we worked very well. Yemi changed the paper and all
You
that.
were still editor then?
About the editor.
Still editor.
Until I think 1990. The editor, the general manager, Alhaji Mohammed, Alhaji Farouk
Mohammed,
went to NIPS in Jos, Kuru.
Yes.
He went to Kuru. It's a one-year program, and I was asked to act as general manager of TPD. At that time, the TPD itself had nearly 2,000 staff, you know. And it was an eye-opener about what was going on in the company. People, there was so much leakage, really. People were printing their own copies, almost equal numbers as what was official. And when their own that they don't sell, they add to our own as unsold. You know that. We were operating about 70 vehicles every day that must move. And there was a huge industry in changing tires because of the haste. This lorry must move at this point. So they will take a tire from one vehicle and put. Meanwhile, they've sold the tire. I looked at all those things, the expenditure on the vehicles, enormous. And for instance, I said, okay, I want to open a file for every vehicle. I want to review it. Don't move a tire from one vehicle to another. We had an advert clerk. As editor, he would bring me the dummy And the weekend, I would dash him some money, maybe 2 naira, 3 naira. You know, this advert clerk was dashing people up to 1,000. You know, he owned 2 football clubs.
So you knew by then your career in Daily Times coming to an end.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes, definitely.
Suddenly we heard, when politics started, that you joined the Obasanjo campaign and the PDP. What's your link to Obasanjo? How did you make that transition?
Well, joining, you know, there was an interregnum, of course. My 50th birthday in 1994, I decided to leave. But I didn't have anything to do. General Liu, again, now said to me, well, I know you have no money. Why don't you come and take an office? In his office, a place he rented on Lee's Road behind the Ikoyi Hotel. You know, so I went there and I tried to trade on art paper and all that. I thought I knew the industry, but I didn't know the market. The traders made sure I couldn't sell except at their own price, which they kept pushing that. So I described myself as a failed trader and all that. But then I did a lot of consultancy for some banks, GTB, Nigeria American Merchant Bank. You know, friends involved me with consultancies and things. And then Dow Jones Financial Services decided to employ me again on part-time to shrink for them. And they paid me, you know, in dollars, things like that. So the election came. Or when Obasanjo was released from prison, General Liu Mohammed was the major person to convince him to run. And then politicians were coming to the office. And he had a room for himself. I had a room upstairs. Are and Uba Dairo had one room. So sometimes the politicians will spill over. And my position at that time was that it was the turn of the Igbos to produce and things like that. But one day, General Liu asked me that he wanted me to come and work on the campaign. That I should go home, discuss with my wife, and he wanted me to handle the publicity and all that.
Up to that time, have you met Obasanjo in person? Are you comfortable?
I had met him before.
Yes.
You know. In fact, soon after he came out of prison, I went with General Liu and then to Obasanjo's house in Abeokuta, and Abibi came in from Mina, you know. So I had met him. But I wasn't interested in politics, really. So my younger brother was in my office and we discussed it. Well, Aliu Guso had done everything for me as a friend. If he asked something of me, why not? So I went back and said, I don't have to go home. I have to decide on it. If you're there, I will be there. That's it. They said, yeah. We got into a car, drove to Ota, meeting with Obasanjo. And, you know, he tried to ask me, he probed me with questions and so on, and things like that, you know. So that's how.
Were you happy working with Obasanjo, both as a candidate and as president eventually?
Even the campaign itself, it got to a point we became quite close, really. We became very close.
People say
we could sit and talk about ideas
yes,
in his bedroom
yeah,
and things like that.
but he's not the kind of person that allow you to have your say, and you are his communications man.
I would normally tell him the truth, but he knew that I was sincere and things like that. You remember one incident. His first visit to meet the PDP, which was being formed, he offered to give them 300 million.
Naira.
You remember Naira?
Yes.
Yeah, I remember that story and all that in Abuja. And he was coming back to Ota. And when I saw the news, I was shocked. But by the time he came back, I had done a new story that said what he meant was that his friends, he has friends, he believed were going to finance his campaign. Out of whatever he gets, he's going to give, to the party, which he did in the end. But the point was, I already have a story changing the focus, because the issue was, where did he get? And the press was against him.
Yes.
The Lagos press was anti. So I went to see him as soon as he came back, and I said, "Sir, you shouldn't have said this." He said, "Why not? Who are you to tell me?" I said, "Yeah, but the question they're asking now is, where did you get the money?" So that stopped him. I said, "Look at what I have done." I gave him the paper. He read it and approved it. And I began to call editors with our version. So instead of those huge headlines, at least our own version got in that someday. You understand?
Yes.
Then there were, of course, those who were telling him, how can you trust an Igbo man? He's leaking your information to Ekweme and his tribe people. Things like that. But we got on. We developed a rapport. We could sit in his bedroom full of books. Really, you sit on the book and we talk about ideas and things.
Do you think he was a good president? You were his director of communication. Was he a good president?
I ran the campaign on the basis, the message, the fundamental message, the leader we can trust. He had a record, a track record. When he was head of state, he did a lot of things. Ultimately, he promised to hand over, and he handed over. Nobody had done that. So, the leader we can trust and all that. Then, he came in prepared to be president. Right from day one, he already had 2 bills and so on. He was a very good president, very, very effective.
Yeah.
He made Nigeria to be respected across the whole world. For instance, he got the debt relief, which I don't think anybody has got that kind of package, When he came in 1999, oil price was about $10 per barrel. I hear people shouting, oil price fell to 44, we can't do anything. It was $10. Well, you can check OPEC. Yes. They have the statistics. By the time of its full 1 year, it had only risen to about $15 a barrel. But what did he do? You will remember that at that time, in the late 90s, Nigeria was the home of all scraps of cars. People were, because nobody could afford a new car. Yeah. The middle class was already devastated. First thing Obasanjo focused on, to rebuild the middle class. Starting from the universities, professors' salaries were upgraded, allowances were developed for those professors who supervised postgraduate students. You know, salaries went up.
Yeah.
The middle class was rebuilt very quickly. And that was a very important thing. And it impacted on the economy, how the economy grew.
But do you think he spoiled it all by trying to go for this so-called third term?
The third term. I think that was a mistake. People developed that idea. You know, there was a constitution drafting committee set up and so on. And that was where they brought the idea that if he didn't stay on, things were going to go bad. All the good policies were going to be dumped and so on. And they began to persuade him and all that.
Was he persuaded? Why would you
No, he didn't come out to say he wanted it. Yeah, but he didn't stop it. Do you understand?
Yes, I do.
At some point, actually, I wrote him a memo. As a president, nobody wins a campaign by sitting quiet and looking at it. It's either you want it or you don't want it. If you don't want it, this is what we should do. You know, he looked at it and he called a meeting of all the information people, including the Minister of Information, and said, we should go and study this thing. Yeah, so it was people doing it, but he didn't stop them. That's the only place I would blame him.
Yeah.
People went on and on.
How come you yourself didn't become Minister of Information? I thought that's Minister of Information. That's a kind of natural job for you.
For me? Yeah. Well, it wasn't where he wanted me. It wasn't. But you will also recall, actually, that he didn't give me any appointment at all initially. You remember?
Yeah.
The press started a campaign. What of this man? Why was he not? We had disagreed on certain issues just before inauguration. Certain issues relating to who was going to be chief press secretary, who was going to be Senate president, and so on.
Yeah.
So we disagreed on that.
Yeah.
And we literally were not talking by the time of inauguration. So I wasn't surprised that my name didn't appear anywhere. But they corrected it.
Yes, yes. Tell us about your own political project. You tried to be governor of Abia State. I mean, it's not a common thing for a technocrat like you, a professional, to now jump into this political thing. What really pushed you into that?
Well, Abia State was unfortunate right from the beginning in the kind of governance we had. I wasn't a politician. I didn't know anything, really. In fact, during the campaign, the politicians used to ask, who is that man in suit? I used to appear in suit, and I looked so different from everybody else.
You didn't have a red cap.
I didn't have a cap or anything, you know. But then our state was the first state in this dispensation to impeach the speaker. That had happened by October. By December, the governor wanted to impeach the deputy governor.
This is Onyema,
yes,
the first governor.
Yes. And so we who had become politicians by appointment tried to stop him. That was where the politics started, you know, and all that. You didn't ask me about NDDC.
Yes.
I hope you are coming to it.
Yes.
Because it made a lot of difference
Yes.
in my life. Yeah, but then we got into all this politics.
So let me stop. Let me ask about the NDDC. Was that something done to take you out of the presidency? You were made the first chairman of the NDDC. I mean, what qualified you? You are not even a Niger Delta person.
I'm from the Niger Delta person by definition.
I see.
Abia, my state, is in the Niger Delta.
Okay.
And there was an interpretation by which the president decided I should go and do the work of chairman. But initially he had appointed me senior special assistant, national orientation and public affairs. And I had started a campaign for national rebirth, going to all the states with a new message for change of Nigeria and things. When the issue of Niger Delta Development Commission came up, he asked me if I could do the job. I said, fine, it depends. But we got to the Senate. My governor was fighting my confirmation. The Senate approved everybody and rejected me.
Do you think we will ever get our politics right, given all the experiences you've gone through?
I'm not optimistic. Too many things have gone wrong. Systemic corruption. Basically, everything is corrupted. In my state now, for instance, in our party, the PDP, you call a meeting, people will be expecting that you will give them transport money to come to a meeting of their party. Even if the distance is walking distance.
These are executives of the party, leaders of the party.
Yeah, that's how corrupted the thing is. Members of the party no longer feel that they have to contribute to support the party. The whole idea is that money is coming from somewhere, which is distributed.
I think one glaring example of this rottenness is probably also what is happening in your party, the PDP. You are a member of the board of trustees. We are all watching the spectacle. The party going from one crisis to another. Can it ever be sorted out, this problem?
Yeah, I think we are sorting it out. Yeah, most of the crises we've had since the party lost power at the center, I've actually had to do with one person, right from when Modu Sharif, who was never a member of the party, suddenly became the chairman of the party. But good sense prevailed, and the party sorted itself out quickly. But we've had issues, crises generated, especially before the presidential elections of 2023. Crisis, and the executive we have. The chairman was forced to leave, Secondus. And then IU came in, and then IU was forced to leave.
So give up?
Yeah, but I think he gave up too quickly.
Tell us about the private Onyema Ugochukwu, the private person. When did you settle down, start having a family and all that?
I married a bit late.
Okay.
Then I was 34 and all that. But I met my wife. She was a medical student when I met her and other things. And we got married. My wife is from the Shekiri tribe in Warri. You know, that's it. We have 4 kids, you know, who are now adults and things like that. I still love her. In fact, I love her very much, and that, you know, we get on. But something I've learned along the way, not to bear grudges. I don't bear grudges because it sort of weighs you out. So that's something I learned along the way. Right from my army days, I realized the transience of power. And there was an incident, at the time the war ended, my brigade was in a part of Biafra that had been cut off from the center of Biafra. We lost contact because our batteries ran down. But when I came back after the announcement of the surrender, some of the men have come out of the bushes and they wouldn't let us sleep in the village. The houses were empty. They said, Nigerian soldiers may find us there and kill them. I realized early in life the power is very transient. It's affected the way I've lived my life. I try to respect people, whether they're big or small.
You are 80, getting to 81, I believe.
I don't go to any work. I don't have any business. That is the truth. I haven't done my memoir, which my family members, everybody is bullying me. Why don't you? I attend meetings of parties. I relate with friends. My place used to be very active. It was a meeting point, you know. But people have moved away, sort of. But still, friends still come.
Yeah.
And that. I am really grateful to God that I got to 80. I must say, we were seven of us, 7 brothers and sisters. And right now it's only myself and my younger sister. I appreciate God. I'm grateful.
For this very revealing look into your life. And thank you, viewers, for joining us in this conversation. And until we meet again, goodbye.